right, we're getting close to the end of the exam review. Number 7, or I'm sorry, this is number 6. Make sure that you're reading carefully here. It asks for the basic trig identity you would use. It's not asking you to do the whole identity. So I would just start working this guy. I think the simpler side of our equation, or simpler side of our proof, is 1 plus cosecant, and I know I can change cosecant into sine. So that's what I would start working with here. I would say 1 plus 1 over sine of x. And I think to figure out which basic identity you would use, just starting the proof is a good way to figure that out. And then, if you wanted to keep going, the way you would match the other side is just turning that 1 into a fancy form of 1, turning that 1 into sine over sine. Then you would get sine plus 1 all over sine. And you would probably at that point think, whoa, that proof was way too easy. What did I do wrong? But you didn't do anything wrong. The basic identity that you used here was that cosecant is the same as 1 over sine. You can also do this a little bit by elimination. You don't have any squareds up here, so D and B are not good options. And I don't see anywhere to use that sine is equal to cosine times tangent, because all we have in our problem are sines and cosecants. So a couple ways to approach that problem. You can do it by actually starting the proof and seeing, kind of making that link there, or by getting rid of options that don't make any sense. All right, this next one is a simplification. So I think simplifications are actually a little harder than proofs, just because here we have multiple, like, what am I trying to get to? You have multiple options. So let's just start working what we can. I'm going to turn all of these into sines and cosines. Remember, that is kind of the best tactic for starting any proof, is to turn everything into sines and cosines. So cosecant is the same as 1 over sine, and nothing is squared here, so be careful with that. Cotangent is cosine over sine. And in my denominator, secant is 1 over cosine. All right, I'm going to keep simplifying. I'm going to work my numerator first. In my numerator, 1 times cosine is cosine. And sine times sine is sine squared. And here you can either group, or you can, so group meaning do your complex fraction like this, or you can flip the second and multiply. If you're grouping, your next step just looks like this. Oh, cosine times cosine over 1 times sine squared. If you're doing flip the second and multiply instead, your problem looks like this. Cosine over sine squared times 1 over cosine flipped is cosine over 1. So that step looks the same whether you flip the denominator or do that grouping. In either case, you get to cosine times cosine is cosine squared over sine squared. And if you look at your options here, cosine squared over sine squared is not cosecant squared, it's not 1, it's not secant squared, it is cotangent squared. Again, if working with your calculator is helpful, if you totally just want to lean on your calculator, you would put this into a graph, this original, and graph your other options and see which graph matches. With cosecant, you have to put that in your calculator as 1 divided by sine of x. For cotangent, you would put it as 1 divided by tangent of x. And for secant, you put it in as 1 over cosine of x. So you can see how with this problem in particular, that would be kind of a nasty thing to enter into your y equals. But it's doable, and if you have time to check your work that way, I encourage you to check your work. any way that you can.